Ready to
This
start.
meeting is being recorded.
Welcome to Chicago IANDS, everybody. We're going to take just a minute or two for a brief meditation and to help everybody get settled and connected. So if you have things on your lap or things in the way, you might want to put them to the side and get yourself in a relaxed position. Allow yourself to just kind of relax all over and maybe gently close your eyes and allow yourself to go where you go when you go. Welcome back. Always hard to come back. Just a couple of brief things. One, please, if you can, make a donation. We aren't collecting enough to make our monthly expenses at the moment. If you want to make a donation, you can go to our website, www.chicagoians.org, and click on the thing that talks about donations, and that tells you ways to do it through the what's it called, the Zelle. Through Zelle is probably the easiest way. It tells you how to do that. So that would be great. The second thing is about our speaker next month. We have Andrea Corey coming. Andrea is an amazing, interesting woman who's had quite a few spiritual experiences. But she had a profound experience in losing her daughter to cancer when she was 28. And she wrote a book about it, which is quite wonderful. If you go to our website, you can find out more information about her beforehand. I've discovered over the years that a lot of people who've lost children come to our meetings, and I don't think there's any pain more profound than losing a child. And these people have reported to me that they've been greatly helped by this meeting in dealing with their pain. So I'm really happy to have another person who can talk to us about that. And so she will be joining us next month. So um, we're booked through December, and we've got some great things coming up. So take a look and join us. Um, Meanwhile, back at the ranch, we have our good friend Althea with us today. Althea was a very active member here and helpful and volunteering and being social and healing people and doing all kinds of good things here until she moved to Little Rock in May. And now she's coming to us from Arkansas.
That's right.
So um, I'm going to let her talk about her story and clue you
Thank
in.
you, Diane.
So welcome, Althea. We're so glad to see you again. Glad you're
Thank
here.
you. It is so great to see everyone here. I want to say thank you, Diane, and the IANDS board for inviting me to be the speaker. I love to talk. Sometimes I make sense. Hopefully, I will today, fingers crossed. So, I'm going to talk about, I've had two NDE experiences, but I'm going to talk about really how I got here, here, like right now. Uh, I did live in Evanston for a while. And I had this eye infection. I went to the eye doctor and I went to ambulatory care across the street from Skokie Hospital. And I had been there before. And when I had gone there, it's this huge room. It's like one side is the eye doctor and the other side is like the rest of the body parts. You know, there are four receptionists and it's this huge room with tables and chairs and it's usually so crowded. I've had to ask someone, do you mind holding your purse so I could sit down? And there are at least 50, 75 chairs in this waiting room. Well, I go there and it's empty. There's no one there. And there's one receptionist. And I'm like, what just happened? What's this about? So I go over and I'm in the right place. And she's like, just, have a seat and wait for the doctor. Well, I'm guided to the very back table and I sit down and there's a flyer on the table and I pick it up and it says Evanston Hospital, Frank Auditorium, Chicago IANDS, Diane Willis. And I'm like, wow. So I read this blurb that was on there because there was a speaker coming up and I was just fascinated and I felt something go through me that because I understood what IANDS was, even though I had never heard of it. Well, I got up and I went to every table and every chair in that room. This was the only flyer. If I hadn't gone with my guidance to the back room and sat in that chair, I wouldn't have gotten the flyer. I wouldn't have gone to IANDS. So I go to the IANDS meeting and I open the door and I see all these people shaking hands with each other, waving, talking, reading books. And I hear inside me, home. And I burst into tears. And I hear, must be an NDE. And I turn and it's Diane. She's talking to someone at the side of the auditorium wall. And this is the first time I've been able to tell this story without bursting into tears. Even when I told Diane the other day about this, I started crying and I thought, I've been telling people this story for several years and I'm always crying. Why is that? And I thought, you know, when we stand in a doorway and we watch the activity, we have all the emotions and the anticipation and the what ifs of what could be. But until we enter the room and become a part of it, that's when we feel the shift. And I realized that in thinking about it, because I wanted to share this experience with everyone. Because when I started going to the back of the room, my mind was like, no, you should sit in the first chair because it's polite for the assistant of the eye doctor. Because when they come out, she doesn't have to wait for you to walk from the back of the place all the way to the front. Well, that makes sense if you're thinking that way. But I went with what my guidance told me. If I hadn't, I wouldn't have seen that flyer. I wouldn't have met Diane. I wouldn't have met all these amazing, wonderful people that I've met during IANDS, and I wouldn't be here right now. And I have a lot of people call me saying, I don't hear my guidance. Why? How do I hear my guidance? Well, you first have to ask for it, and then you have to be aware. You have to give yourself permission to listen to your guidance, and then you have to follow it. There are times where we won't hear our guidance. You know, the teachers are silent when we take a test. Part of, really, we're all here for spiritual lessons. It's a very creative plane. This is the plane to create, and it's about our spiritual understanding and our spiritual learning. So our guides stop talking to us if we aren't listening, if we're not following. We have discernment. And if we want to go with what our guides say, which really is our higher self and the guidance that takes us to the places that bring us joy and love, why go anywhere else? It's because we have to learn to do that. We're so conditioned for all these other judgments, all these other thought forms that seem like they're supposed to be the right thought form. It's polite to sit closer, to be there for the doctor. They don't care. I mean, I don't think they care, but it's really not even about them. It's about, I listened to my guidance, I got the flyer, my life changed. I encourage anyone that has had an STE, spiritually transformative experience, or an NDE, near-death experience, to write about it and talk about it. Because when you do that, you claim or reclaim who you are. And it brings you to meet people that you align with, that have experiences and understanding that you have. And we build off of that. I have met the most amazing people through Chicago IANDS, and I'm so grateful for that. So my first NDE happened before I was 7 years old. So psychologically in that place, you don't have a sense of self, but you're starting to awaken to that. But we still have how we feel about ourselves, how we view the world. And the abuse that I was going through started several years before I was between 6 and 7. And on this day, and I don't talk a lot about it because there are several people involved in the abuse that I lived through. And there are several other people that are still healing because they were victims also. And so we sort of made a pact on, we're not gonna expose too much through the healing process for people. But it's not that anyone really needs to know any more than what I've just said. What happened was there was an eruption of violence, and I was physically harmed until I died. And I remember leaving my body and going through this tunnel. It was dark, but if you've ever taken a flashlight and you put it through like a tin can, the edges of the can will light up, not the whole thing, but just parts of it. It was as if someone took a neon blue light and shined it through this tunnel. And right before the entrance, where it was all bright white light, right before that, I saw this neon blue light, and it reminded me of when, is it Nityananda or Muktananda talks about the blue pearl, which opens up and it's a deity. I didn't see a deity, but it's that color that was talked about. It's that cobalt blue. It's that neon blue that's just so captivatingly beautiful that you just go. So I went from this chaos and terror and physical pain and just wanting to die, not knowing that I did, but I did. And when I come out of this tunnel, I am filled with the most magnificence of love. It was the most extraordinary experience. And I didn't think of anything but being in that moment. And for someone that is not 7 years old yet, our experiences in life and our language is limited. except that I wasn't in the physical body anymore. I was consciousness. I was the frequency. I was a vibration. I was spirit. I was consciousness. I was love. I was wisdom, because that's what it all is. And so I might not have had the words to everything, but I had the understanding while I was there. The first thing I was taken to was a choir. It was like tones and sounds and everything. I like some people in there. I've done research in NDE, and I am so grateful for being a moderator for Ned Matinia's near death experiences site on Facebook. Yeah, I love the people, I love the experience. And so I've had several years of just reading submissions and reading all sorts of things about NDE. And so often in people's NDEs, they talk about seeing their loved ones, recognizing their loved ones, seeing people. I didn't see that. Everything for me was vibration. So this choir of tones was all these individual lines of frequency that were vibrating. And in the vibratory rate, they were emitting a color and an associated tone to that color. And this choir harmonized. It was extraordinary. And I was there, and then I was taken to another dimension within this whole area of consciousness. And it was Christian music. I grew up in the church. I loved the church. Well, I did. And I loved church music. And so what I was listening to was Christian music. What I was looking at was still vibratory, right? And it was more subdued colors, more uniform colors. It was like green with like a white. And I thought, I'm seeing this as if I'm on the earth and seeing the church choir, or a church choir, because it wasn't the church choir I was used to, but a church choir. And so it resembled that to me while I was looking at it. And I thought, well, that's how interesting is that? But I still never saw features. I never saw a face. I never saw a person. This went on. I went to male choirs, children's choirs, women's choirs. It was, and then I went to instrumental music, and I saw more colors than I have ever seen on the earth plane. I heard more sounds than I've ever heard on the earth plane. And it's because when we're in our physical body, we are limited to what we can perceive, just like we become limited to what we can understand. For people that meditate a lot, they come back from meditation and they have been to this place of eugen, something that is beyond nature, something that you can't define. It is beyond the presence of the magnificence of God, but it is contained in that. And that's what they come back to. And they are in this bliss. And as the day goes by, if they don't meditate again to go there, then they start to feel like they lose the comprehension and the understanding that they gained at that time. That happens to us because it's not us as a person, it's not our spirit, it's not our soul, it's that we're contained in this physical body and this mind and the construct of the earth plane. And that is what happens to all of us. I went to a place, my final choir that I went to was amazing to me. And I didn't understand it until years later, but I had a sense of it. And what I was hearing was different languages from the earth plane. There was not one bit of dissonance in the sound. Everything blended. The harmonies were beyond what I could have ever imagined, and certainly beyond what I have ever heard on the earth plane. And I kept standing there going, all these different languages, and yet we are one. Because everything became one as the choir, as a choir. And it wasn't until later that I studied Italian, French, and German for a very short period of time. I'd studied Spanish and I was speaking English as my first language. So I had recall of this moment of this choir, and then I understood that what everyone was singing about in these different languages was about love and that we are one. And it was something that has stayed with me. And I go, it's so easy over there on the other side, because really the essence of everything and the one truth over there is love. I went from there to a scene. Now, everything had been vertical energy. And I went to this scene that there was like this V coming up of yellows and golds and silvers and whites and tans. And it was three-dimensional, and it came up like this. And then there was horizontal vibration. It was like pink and coral and purple and plum and lavenders and more color than I can identify, periwinkle, and more. And then there was a whole horizon line that was dark. It was like dark blue and black. And then it started to be blue and green. And then it seemed to be clear with tan underneath it, but there was elevation to it. And this was like third dimensional. It wasn't flat, just like the choir wasn't flat. It was like in different dimensions. And then there were these areas of color. And I thought I could make this look like a sunrise at the ocean. I had been to the ocean, so I knew, and I love the ocean. And I could see that in there. I've always been drawn to abstract work. And so I thought, I'm going to keep it abstract. I didn't work my mind to see anything. But it didn't have a lot of meaning then, but it had a tremendous amount of meaning to me later, especially after reading more and more and more NDEs about how people saw people as physical form. They saw their animals, they saw relatives, they saw lovers, they saw friends, they had these unions. I didn't get that. Everything was vibration and color and sound. And then I went into the life review. Now, I've had people say, oh, karma isn't real. Oh, forget it. It so is. It doesn't mean literally that we'll pick up a gun and shoot someone and then they'll come back and shoot you. It's not like that. But you get back what you put out in the life review. And it's for the lesson of learning and the lesson of compassion. It's all about understanding. There is absolutely no judgment on the other side, none at all. I was shown the people one at a time that had been abusing me. And it was to show me that one abuser in particular wasn't even conscious that he was abusing me and other people. He had been so tortured as a child, and it had been buried, that this buried, to me, it was a monster, would come up in him, and then there would be an attack. And what was explained to me was that it was for the purpose of the psyche not being able to hold down this horrible trauma that this man had lived through, but it was to bring it up and make it conscious. And what we do is we act out what was done to us to other people until there's a moment where it's like you crack the egg and you see what's inside. And it was like his psyche, his consciousness was waiting for that crack to happen. So he would go, what am I doing? This was done to me, and start his healing process. I didn't have the wherewithal to ask, well, why me? You know, why me? Why does it have to happen? Why can't he just hurt himself? Because it's really about himself. Well, because we are one, and because we have lessons to learn, and it's just kind of the way it is. We don't always understand everything, and it's to take note of it. And that's really all I could comprehend at the time. Even though I had more wisdom than what I had, I still didn't understand everything. So my job, I was told, was to learn how to forgive this man and to learn and identify how it influenced and affected me. And as that unfolded, for me to say, do not place anyone between me and God. I had placed this man between me and I lived in absolute terror. How can you not as a child? How can you not when you're threatened that if you tell anyone, they'll kill you, they'll kill your dog and take your family away from you? I mean, abusers are invested in having power over someone. They're invested in confusing the reality of their victims. And so these were challenges that I evidently chose. What? We choose what we're going to go through, and we choose it for lessons. So I made this choice to go through this, and I did this so that this other person could eventually become conscious and identify his lessons. Now, I'll jump back and forth just so I don't lose, because I'm afraid if I go on with the past life experiences, I'll forget to tell you why I'm talking about this part of the NDE. But it's that I had a healing teacher that said to me, unless you confront your abuser, you're never going to heal. Well, we all heal in our own way and in our own time. Eventually, I was in front of this man. It was years and years later, and years of therapy for me later, and spiritual classes. And I looked at him and he looked at me, and we saw each other. We saw everything. And he started to shake. And he started to tremble. And I saw that if I confronted him about something that he did that he was unable to help because he was unconscious, because all that trauma had been buried, I would have broken. And I thought, do I want to break someone? I had gone through this experience later in my life of being broken, of not being able to communicate, of not being able to think straight, of not being able to function, of not being able to walk into a room and greet people and talk to people. And I stayed isolated and alone and miserable. And it was because I had to put the pieces together. And I had been shattered by several different experiences, but I saw that in this one experience, had I confronted him because he was so fragile, he would have shattered. And I just thought, I don't need to do that. I don't want to hurt him. I don't want to break him. If he is trembling like this, it lets me know he has some indication and some memory. And that's between him and God. It's not between him and me. My forgiveness is about me and me and me and God, and sending forgiveness to him and to the other people that were abusive to me. So I think that we can heal without confronting our person that abused us. Because I walked away feeling like I had empowered myself by talking about good times that we shared, because we had, and not talking about how impaired my life was, which it was. I went through years. I mean, when you're 7-year-olds, you want to get hugs and you want to be happy. And all of a sudden I was like, don't touch me. I wouldn't let anyone touch me. I wouldn't let anyone physically near me because I had been so physically hurt. I didn't trust anyone. I felt betrayed even into high school. But I was also bullied along the way by people in my class. But I was affected by this. And I go, well, what would I have been like had I had my capabilities. I didn't do well in classes for a while, never studied. I got great grades. So if I had studied, what would have happened? Wow. But there's an investment from abusers for you not to know. People that are controlling. I've worked with this with clients a lot, especially when I was in New York, because there's so many creative people. Man, they're just we're all so amazing. And a lot of people would come to me because they wanted to write a book and they couldn't write. They wanted to dance, they couldn't go to class. They wanted to audition, they got performance anxiety, direct, paint, bake, all these things. And something was stopping them. And for a lot of them, they had someone in their life that was an authority figure that was controlling, that was terrified of life because of their own restrictions. And the creative child is absolutely, gives me chills, is absolutely terrifying to an adult because they can't control the creativity of a child, because what the child creates is so unexpected. And if the authority figure of the parent is, you can't do this because I don't understand it. They don't tell you that. They just get critical. They just get judgmental. They just, in their own way, it's passive aggressive. They get demeaning. And so the person like stops doing things, thinks low of themselves. And then when they do get that heart and soul awareness of this is my truth and I want to create, they're not able to because they're holding down this judgment of the fear of rejection or seeing how unhappy their parents are, or their uncle or aunt, their sister, brother, whatever it is, and they sacrifice their own happiness for the other person. Well, we don't take happiness away from anyone. We don't. And as we learn not to judge ourselves, to block and limit ourselves, we learn to not judge the people around us, that we've started to think less of ourselves because we took in these attitudes of these other people. And how we do that is through forgiveness and through understanding that these are people that are living in fear. They have to control things. They have to control things to make things work. Well, nothing works under control. And nothing works if you're trying to get someone to be a certain way. I've had so many clients come to me over the years that they're miserable. Like this one woman, she was very sensitive, very, very pretty woman. She was an attorney and hated being an attorney. I was like, well, then don't do it. You have savings. If you need more, save money. Go and study what you want to do. She wanted to be a tarot reader. And she said, no, I have to do it for my family. A lot of us are like that. And then we end up judging ourselves and feeling like we lost our calling. Does our purpose always get fulfilled on the other side? The answer is no, is what I got because of what I'm talking about now. And then there are times where things get rerouted. There was a story of a man who bought a lottery ticket. He won. He lost the ticket. A year later, on that same day, he won the lottery. So that was part of his plan in coming in, to have a great deal of money given to him. And the unfolding of his story was about how he uses this money. That was something he came down with. So when he lost the first ticket, the universe gave him another one. And what I thought was so interesting is when he lost that ticket, he cried. And I found out about all this through a family member. And the family member said, it's the first time I've ever seen my dad cry. And all of a sudden, he started looking at what loss was about. And in that year, he went through tremendous spiritual changes because he lost a lottery ticket. Who would have thought? But it took him to places in his heart, and he changed in how he related to his family. how cool is that, that the universe gifted him with what he lost? I wanted to be a therapist, and then I felt I was too stupid to be a therapist. But I was also, I was had the investment of I'm not supposed to learn things, I'm not supposed to know things, and I'm not supposed to talk about anything. So I lived with that. So I had people saying, "Oh, go into the theater." So I did, but it was like not. I worked in the theater. I mean, I did all right, but it wasn't my passion or my heart. I mean, it was fun and I love it and I love the working with people, but the whole time I wanted to be a therapist. Well, here I am working as as a spiritual counselor, as an ordained minister, and working as a performance anxiety for people, and working as a spiritualist and as a psychic medium. So I have been able to fulfill what I told myself I wanted. And I was in a very quiet moment when I thought, I want to be a psychiatrist. There was no one around me. I was away from everyone. I was free of all the judgment. And then I went, no, I'm too stupid. And that's when I listened to other people tell me what I should be. And I went off in that direction and kind of was miserable because it was fun, but you know, really we all know what's in our heart and we have to find the courage and the commitment and to get rid of the judgment that we've taken in from the people around us so we don't carry restrictions. We are just the love of what our spirit is. So as we learn to create here, we're also learning to become aware and to let go and to forgive. And that's a real important step in our process on the earth plane, because that's how we find that wow factor of who we are for ourselves. Another another topic that I was talked about while I was over there that just stayed with me and just blew me out of my mind when I got back to the earth plane was that reincarnation is absolutely real and absolutely important. And I had heard of reincarnation. I had found a book as a kid and I didn't understand all the words in it, but it was about reincarnation. So I was drawn to that before my NDE. And so what the story is we do not die, we transition. And we have a tribe that we reincarnate with. Wow. And this tribe, we are all aspects of each other, but we are separate and we come into different bodies. It was a hard concept for me to understand for a long time, but I held on to it because I knew it was important. I just didn't know why. But what I have experienced on the earth plane and what I was told during some of my STEs is that because I thought I was crazy in what I was going through. And so I had guidance come in to say, no, you're not crazy. But what it is we have selective tribal lessons that we learn. If you've ever had this moment where all of a sudden you have felt something lift from your shoulders or from your back or from your solar plexus, or just this energy just leaves you as you go, what's that about? I don't know. How do I feel? I feel lighter. I don't feel blocked. My headache's gone. I'm not nauseous. I feel like I can exercise. I don't feel so frightened. There's always something. It's very subtle, that's very different. And what that's about, because we can't always identify it, but it's for us to take note of. That's generally when, as a tribe, we have collectively become aware of something that was either a restriction, a limitation, or a problem. And now it is clear and we have learned it as a group. And so we release it as a group. And this tribe that we have reincarnated with elevates. We elevate as a group. Wow. So we can learn on the spiritual path by our own, pardon me, by our own actions, thoughts, meditations, however we learn it. But we are part of a whole that's in separate bodies. And that's our tribe. Those are our soulmates. And when we all become conscious of something as a group, we heal and we release that restriction. You know, we have more than one soulmate. We have a whole tribe. There are soulmates, but we don't always meet them. Sometimes they're living like scattered. Sometimes you feel, I've had people say, well, I don't have any soulmates. And it's like, well, you do. They're just not here. They're somewhere else. And if through meditation you start to talk with someone or feel like you're sensing someone, you probably are. And it's probably your tribe or your soulmate, one of your soulmates of your tribe. They're just not physically where you are. And some of them are on the other side. I've, I, my mother was a nurse at Evanston Hospital. I grew up in Wilmette. And I was at the store with her. And this would happen from time to time where someone would come over and say to her, thank you so much for taking care of my husband. He feels like you were the person that saved his life. And my mother would be, and I remember this one woman so distinct because after I came back, I'll stay away from this, after, and I'll talk more about it, but after I came back from my NDE, I saw auras, I saw what I call dead people, spirit, and I came back knowing I had met God, or I had been in what God was, and that we were all God. But I didn't understand it, but I knew it. But you know, there it is. So this woman, when I looked at her, I saw this aura, and I didn't really see her body. I saw her eyes and this energy when she was talking to my mom. And I thought, she's connected to my mom. So maybe her husband is. And when my mother was very gracious and just very flattered. And when the woman left, I said, who was that? Do you remember her? She goes, I don't have a clue. But I could tell my mother was so pleased for the acknowledgement. I was with my mother when she died. And a few weeks before she went over to the other side, a few weeks before she died, she said, my dad was here and he's going to take me over to the other side. Grandpa is going to be here to take me through the tunnel, because my mother knew what the tunnel was. Well, when my mother died, oh, so she told me that. And then a few days later, she said, he has been here and he's coming very soon. Well, a few days later, on her 98th birthday, I went to sing her happy birthday and read her birthday cards to her. And she died while I was there. The room was filled. My grandpa was there, just like she said, my nana, my grandpa, my grandmother, her sister, my Aunt Betty. She had a slew of friends growing up. She was just like this really amazing, wonderful woman. And they were all there. This woman that had talked to her in the grocery store, thanking her for taking care of my husband, was one of the spirits that took her to the other side. My mother died on her 98th birthday, so she hung in there for a long time. It was the most extraordinary gift that I felt I was given, to be there with someone who I love so much, and to know the people that were there to take her to the other side. And I could recognize them. I recognized the woman from the grocery store. I recognized my grandma. Recognized my grandpa. I recognized my aunt, my uncle. And then I knew I could sense all these other people. This room was like a party room in spirit. And my mother's spirit left her body and stood by me. I went and got the nurse. I said, my mother's just died. She said, I was just in there. She's fine. I just took her blood pressure. I said, no, she's died. She came in. She was like, I think your mother just died. I was like, that's what I'm telling you. But my mother's spirit was still in the room with all these other spirits. And after she said, let me go call the morgue, the mortician, I'll be right back. They all left. And once they left, there was the greatest sense of love and peace and joy and celebration of life in this room. It was just extraordinary. So through the Near Death site on Facebook that I'm a moderator of, Ned Mantinius group, which is a wonderful, wonderful group. So tune in and, join it if you are looking for other people for a support group and to get to know and all the things that the group provides. There are a lot of people that write in and say, I'm so afraid of death. Well, we transition. My mother couldn't walk. My mother couldn't really comprehend. She had dementia. She was miserable. And as she was losing her abilities, she was saying, why do I have to stay here? I'm not processing anything. I'm not learning anything. I'm in pain and I'm frustrated. Well, there's a key for you. She let go of all of that, and that's why she could transcend. And when she was there, all the people that were meaningful to her in her life were there. And they took her over to the other side. It's not just one person, it was a party. She was a popular gal. She was pretty spunky. And the resonance in that room was just outstanding. So for anyone that is afraid of death, we transition. We're spirit. We're here forever. We're in different forms. And you will see your loved one because they wait for you. A lot of them do. Sometimes some people don't. But by the time you get to the other side, there's no expectations. Expectations are part of the earth plane. We just don't have them because we know that all that is. It is what it is. I am everything and nothing. And people go, I don't understand that. We're a form of energy, and how we create on the earth plane is through our mind, through the plan that we make. And that all dissolves as we dissolve. I even saw that happen. I have seen that happen. I have seen towns just go into energy and become this wave of vibration because it contains everything in this frequency, and then go be a part of the person whose life it was. And then that person's spirit starts to blend as a frequency and blends into this other resonance of the town. And then it disappears because it goes into another dimension to exist in the frequency and dimension it can exist in, which is consciousness. And so we are everything because we are a part of everything. And we are nothing because as we absorb into consciousness, it's like we disappear. And that's what that means. People are like, my life matters. I am something. I'm not nothing. It's kind of a way of describing what happens to us because we're not our physical body. And we are spirit, and we are this source of energy. And that's the understanding of I'm everything and nothing. There are people that go, I just can't imagine not seeing my husband. Well, he's probably going to wait for you. If there was this tremendous love, you'll see each other. If it's meant for him to go on, you won't see him. But when you're out of body, it's not an issue because you have understanding not only of who and what you are, but who and what everyone around you is. And it's magnificent. So reincarnation, back to reincarnation, because that is so important. I just had a letter the other day of, I can't imagine being anything else to my husband. And I certainly can't imagine being a man making love to a woman because I'm still a woman, and that means I'd be making love to a woman, and I don't believe in that. Well, thank you for explaining who you are right now. I appreciate that, and I embrace that for the woman that wrote this to me. But when you leave your body, you'll be so different. You won't feel the same. You won't remember your past lives unless you're given it to you by your spirit, by your soul, by going to the Akashic records because you're looking for information. And it's not an issue. What we fixate on the earth plane is like it's time consuming, and it doesn't get anywhere if it's based on critical judgment or limitation or trying to fix a problem that we can't really resolve. The best thing to do is to be in the moment, and that's very hard to do because our baggage that we have collected because of how we have defined the experiences that we have lived through. And that's where we need compassion for ourselves and forgiveness for ourselves. I went to a place in Indiana called Starved Rock. And this was years ago. And I was looking out at the water and seeing the water and the sunlight on the ripples and the sky and the clouds. And I went into this magnificence of this experience. And all of a sudden, I looked down at my arm, and my arm was brown. I was like, holy shit, what happened to me? And I looked at my chest, and I wasn't wearing a shirt. And I was like, oh my God, what I do? Have I gone unconscious? Have I gone psychotic and taken my clothes off? And then I looked at my whole self, and I was a man and I was an Indian. And I looked back up at the sky, and I felt something go into my field. And that's where there was a transition that I remember happening, and I remember having it come together. And I was an Indian. And I went running into this forest up to this mountain, and I felt like I was flying like a deer. And all of a sudden, I stopped, and I was by waterfalls. It was just a beautiful, beautiful day. And then I felt what happened at Starved Rock. There was an Indian tribe that went up to the top of the mountain. They were surrounded by another Indian tribe, pardon me, and all the Indians on Starved Rock, on the top of the Starved Rock, died. If they tried to go down the mountain to get food, they were killed because of the Indian tribe around them. And I saw that. And as an Indian man that was at the top of this, I looked up at the sky, and just like down at the water, I recognized the magnificence of life. And I said, I surrender to the greatness. I didn't say God, I didn't say Jesus. It was to the greatness, to the consciousness, and I left my body. And I went to the other side. I went to God. I went to the glory of being on the earth plane and the glory of leaving without judgment. We don't have to suffer to learn spiritual lessons. And that is like this label we're given on the earth plane, no pain, no gain. Well, no, not really. If you're in physical therapy, it's perspective. If you're in physical therapy from an injury and you exercise through pain, you could re-injure yourself. You know, a good physical therapist will say, if you're in pain, stop. You're just not ready for this exercise. Let's take you through it to another way. Just stop. If you're in a dance class, they're like, work through it, honey. Just work through it. Sweat. Learn to sweat. Learn to stretch those muscles. And you work hard, and it's like it is painful, but you know, you're encouraged to have pain that way. But the emotional and psychological pain Do we need this experience? In that moment, and I do feel it was me as an Indian man and this attachment that came into my physical body that was there. It might have been something that some spirit that didn't know he was dead, that had died sudden death on Starved Rock, or left the mountain to get food to bring back to everyone and was killed. I don't know. It's not for me to know. What I know is that we had this moment where we surrendered everything and we became the magnificence of God. And that's when we transcend. And that is stayed with me for a very long time. That has stayed with me because that's what frees us. When my mother was in so much pain, physical pain, and couldn't walk and couldn't, she finally hit that place of letting go. You know, I continually say to myself, do I need this experience? And I ask my higher self, or I say, I do not need this experience. I've started coming down with being sick from time to time, and I've gone, I do not need this experience. I will figure out the meaning of this without this impairment. And then I'm fine the next day. So I give that to you, and it's like, how do we get to that place? We forgive ourselves because we try to do the best we can for ourselves. And anything that has to do with judgment or blaming another person, that's what's holding us onto the earth plane and holding us into our body. The man that abused me didn't know that he was abusing me until later in his life. I could forgive him from my life review and have compassion for him because he didn't know he was doing it. Now, I have a quick question for Diane. Diane, do I need to take a break at any time? Can I keep talking? Because I've been talking for an hour almost. Can I keep talking?
Yes.
Oh, okay,
Yes.
great. All right. If people need a break, put your hand up or something because I can keep talking. But going back to my life review, because I had more than one abuser when I was a child. The other person was aware that he was being abusive to me and physically damaging to me. And I wasn't the only person that he physically harmed or damaged. This was someone that, woe be to him, good luck on your life review, because you will feel the pain that you inflicted on everyone. And in knowing that you're doing it, being conscious and inflicting pain, you're making a choice to be cruel. So whatever it was that you went through to make that okay, you will face that. Now, I had one abuser that was so psychologically damaged, so tortured that his mind shattered that he was not aware that he was abusing me. This man was. So there are ideologies that say there's no evil. Well, there isn't on the other side. It's just love. That's how we get there. That's the only truth. And that's what we want to learn and want to teach ourselves on the earth plane, because then we really have the freedom to do so much for creating. As I felt this attachment that helped me and enabled me to become so much this Indian and this life and go through this past life of starved rock and feeling the magnificence that allowed me to let go without judgment against the other Indian tribe. That is also something that I aligned with for the abusers. The one abuser that was unconscious, but I would look in his eyes and see black, and I would not recognize him. The lines, I mentioned this before, but the lines on his face and his body were so different. He seemed contorted. There are demonics. There are entities that can attach. There are out-of-body spirits that have sudden death, that are disoriented, that don't know that they're dead, that are kind of like, in and out of they go to the fourth dimension, but the fourth dimension interpenetrates the third dimension. And there are times through the spiritual involvement and the desire to learn and the understanding where that frequency, those frequencies create a break between the frequency, the walls of different dimensions, and the fourth dimension enters the third dimension, and that's how often we get interaction with out-of-body spirit. Sometimes they are on the earth plane because they don't know that they have left, and they are just with us. And so we see them if you're a medium, or you sense them as a psychic, or even, you don't have to be those things sometimes to end up feeling the spirit that's there or communicating with them. It really depends on desire and openness and ability. But what I learned is possession is something that is real. It isn't real for everyone. Some people, their ideology is so strong that it is blocked out. But there's also organizations that teach you that demons exist. That belief system is in their ideology. And so it does exist there. We believe and create with our mind. And so if you've got an organization and a large group of people that believe a certain way, that gets created. It's just like what we spend our time on. They always say, don't think about what you're afraid of because you'll create it. And you do, because you are focused on something you don't want, but you keep thinking about it until you create it. So it's like, if you don't want it, bless it and release it and say, I don't need this experience. I don't need this to be with me. And you let it go. So it's not there for you. It doesn't influence you because you're not afraid, meaning creating it because you're putting your mind into it, of manifesting something you don't want. There are times where we can call in spirit and not be specific in what we want to call in, and that can bring in a type of spirit that we honestly don't want to have with us. When I was about 8 years old, my mother and I were working with the Ouija board, and my sister had been with us, and my sister got her questions answered, and so she left. So it was me and my mother. And all of a sudden, the lights dimmed, and this heaviness just filled the room. And my mother was like, what just happened? I said, well, the lights dimmed, and there's a heaviness in the room, and there's this really dark blob standing right next to you. And she kind of froze, and she leaned forward and said, we're going to put this away now, and we're never going to use it again. And so we did. We put it away, and we never used it again. And when we put it away, this dark mass that was there lifted. I bring this up because my mother did teach me how to read environmental energy. She didn't know what was going on, but she later realized what had been happening to me. And so we didn't really talk about it, but as I was getting older, she was able to see that I had psychic and intuitive abilities. Well, she did too. She was taught them. She was a nurse in the Navy. She became an admiral. Is it a lieutenant? She was a lieutenant in the Navy in World War II. And my dad was in World War II in the Navy also. And She was taught how to read tarot cards. She was taught, someone taught her all sorts of like psychic stuff that she never talked about, except that once she knew could read energy and could see out of body spirit, like after the Ouija board, we were at this stoplight one day and she goes, "What do you feel?" And I said, "Well, I feel that I'm a passenger, but I'm a man. And the man in the car behind me just put some in the seat behind me, just put something over my neck and strangled me to death." And she said, "And where does the car go?" I said, "We take a right here." And she said, "That's exactly what happened." She felt it too. She said, this is how people get killed. And she said, "The mob will take a right here. And you see that body of water?" I was like, "Yeah." And she goes, "They dump bodies there. So you are never to go there." And I was like, "Hey, fine by me." Because what I was feeling at first, she helped me identify it, but it was like, ooh, ooh. And I was like, how do I, how do I sit here talking to my mom about going to like brownies, the brownie meetings, when I've got like this wire cutting into my throat and there's some guy in the back seat killing me. And then she brought it up because she was feeling it too. So I learned a lot from her in these moments where it was kind of like safe space where no one else was around us. And so as her closing years were happening, we did talk more about it because we did see more and we saw a spirit. And what she saw, I was able to see, and we were able to talk about it. And so it was just amazing. I was with someone when they had heart disease and they had spirit around them. And there were times where this guy would just like not say anything. And I thought, is he stroking out? Is it TIA? And he finally said, "I'm hearing people talk to me." And I said, "Well, do you know who they are?" And he said, "I think so." And then he didn't want to talk about it anymore. But I went one time when he was in the emergency room of a hospital and he had had a stroke. He had had bypass surgery. He was one of the first bypass surgery patients that they did at Northwestern Hospital. 250 patients were given bypass surgery as an experiment because they had never done it before. And I met the doctor because the doctor was my dad's doctor, my dad, and this other man's doctor. And I was like, wow, this is pretty cool. Out of 250 people, I know two people going through this. They're both men. And I said to the doctor, "How many women?" And he looked at me and he said, "Not one. We have no women. All 250 patients are men." And then he said, I asked women if they would go through this. He said, first of all, more men have heart disease than women. And none of the women that do have heart disease said that they would go through it. So this friend, my dad was a trooper. I mean, he just loved life and he had an extraordinary life and was an extraordinary man. And so he would just like forge ahead. My friend, who had the bypass surgery, that I met at the emergency room of a hospital one day, and he was crying. And I really had never seen him cry. And I just went and, kind of stood next to him. And he said, "When do you say it's enough? What's the point where we just let go?" And I thought, how profound this is. We have to decide why we're staying in our body. And are we living for ourselves or are we living for someone else? There are just so many profound questions on what keeps us here. And that's what he was confronted with. It's like he had he had angina, so he had heart pain, shortness of breath, filling up with fluid. And so what happened at the emergency room when I went to meet him there was that they put this, God, it just seemed like this big, like what you'd see in a cartoon of an exaggerated shot. But what they did was they put it in his stomach and they withdrew fluid. And he said, this pain is not pain I want to continue to have. Because it was not the first time he had gone through this. And I said, well, then you talk to God, talk to your higher self. I don't see why you can't let go. That's my point of view. We don't always know our lessons. We don't die before it's our time. We really don't. I really see that from all the people that have written me about how many times they've tried to commit suicide and they failed. You know, and I said, talk to God. You know, what's keeping you here? Who are you living for? And he transcended like a week later, and it was very peaceful. He transcended in his sleep. And during that time, he started to talk to people he hadn't seen, saying goodbye to them. And so he was really staying on the earth plane because he wanted to get love from some people he hadn't heard from. And he wanted to acknowledge or recognize other people. And when he worked on that and when he went through that, then he was, and I'm at peace with myself. And that's when he left, just like when I was the Indian with this attachment, and we surrendered to the magnificence of God, of love. That's how we let go. And that's because people ask me this all the time. What keeps us here when we don't want to be here? Well, our lessons, but it's also our attachments. We don't learn all of our lessons when we come in. And that's why people like past lives are like, did I learn my lesson? Oh, I don't know. Let's take you on a regression and let's see. Or why don't you do some work in meditation on it to see what you come up with, to see what you get. Anything that we want to access, we can get that information because it's ours. It's a part of the Akashic records, and that's one of the frequencies. I don't remember what I've said so far today because I just kind of like talk, and I don't remember. But when I was over on the other side and everything was frequency, what we are is these three threads. One is the vibration of the Akashic records, in which the Akashic records holds the information of everything we've done, everything we've come from, and everything we go on. Well, not what we go on to, but everything we've come from. Everything gets recorded. Some people are paranoid about the government. I go, the government? Consciousness takes a record of everything. Don't worry about them. You know, this is all for learning. You know, don't even give it a second thought. But that's the Akashic records. That's one of the threads that we are. The other thread is where we are in that moment. The third thread, and I had this on the other side, it was about what is to come. And the reason I had that third thread with me, I realized is because on my first NDE before I was 7, I was given the opportunity to stay on the other side or to come back to Earth. And I decided to come back to Earth because I missed my mom and I missed my dog, and bam, like a shot, I just like was back in my body, back in the earth plane, back with my dog. I physically hurt. And I was so overwhelmed and disoriented because of what I had been through. And I was given the indication that all of these three threads, the Akashic record thread goes back to the Akashic library in the state of consciousness, and we can call upon that and use that because it is a part of us. And where we are right now and what is to come blends, and that blends together. So there's no separation of that while you're on the earth plane. And it seemed to separate on the other side so we could get clear on what we've come from and look at our life review and then look at what is to come. I've had a lot of people tell me they sign contracts when they reincarnate. I've never seen that. I wasn't shown a contract. I don't know anything about it. I can't say it's not true or true. It's just something a lot of people have talked about. So if it's something that has come up for you in one of your dreams, or a spiritually STE, spiritually transformative experience, don't throw it out. Don't go, I'm crazy. Trust it. Just like what I referred to earlier, if you have the impulse to clean your closet out, do it. Because anything that we do is really reflective of what is for us spiritually. If you want to start painting, don't hold off. I have a friend that's been wanting to write a book for 10 years. Well, sit down and write it. Just start. Just get a journal, get a book, get a notebook, and just start taking notes. Start taking notes on the location, the geography of where the story is going to be. Just start. In doing that, we are honoring our higher self and our spirit. And the more we honor who we are in spirit, the more we are given in terms of hearing. So if you feel stuck, just start, burst through the limitation and just start, and don't judge yourself. Because they say, like, you don't write a play, you rewrite a play. It's the same thing with anything that's creative. But you have to start, and our clarity of hearing our guidance develops more and more and more to us. One thing that I wanted to share with everyone that's here that have had a near-death experience or STE, we do get separated from life a lot because we are different. When I told my two friends in grade school that I saw God and that I saw dead people, the look on their faces, everything changed. I lost them as friends. And then because everybody gossips, I lost all my friends and I became a freak. And I was like, no, I was just kidding. I was just kidding. But the damage was done. What I learned later, they weren't my tribe. I talked about that earlier, that we are a frequency. And if I've seen this with people that go to school and they are outcasts. And they're like, well, these are the popular people and I want to be a part of that. And then I go, all right, is it them that you want to be a part of? Or is it that you don't like feeling rejected? But let's take a look at something deeper. Who are they really to you? And then you start to see how you're treated, which is not loving because you're bullied. How can that be your friend? That doesn't feel good. You want to look for people that make you feel good and uplift you and support you and encourage you. And then you start to see how different they are. They're different in how they move, how they talk. It's because they're a tribe and their frequency is different, and you're not the frequency, and you're not going to fit in that puzzle. And the sooner you give it up and go, all right, where is the puzzle I fit into? Your adventure begins in a path of joy and wonder and expectations that we're not supposed to put on ourselves, but they motivate us. Our dreams and our goals motivate us, and they're happy goals and dreams. And we start to develop that instead of hanging on to the door that's closed. I'm at a place now where I go. I think I've been talking for like an hour and a half. It's about an hour and a half. Do we end at 4? Because it's 3:21. So are there any questions anyone has? Diane, have you gotten questions from people?
I haven't seen anything come up.
Okay,
People can write questions on the, what's it called? The
Chat.
chat, thank you. Yes,
yes, thank you.
in the chat box.
Okay. And there might not be any, and that's fine. I can think of other things too. There's so much to talk about.
What about your near-death experience?
Oh my gosh. I'd forgotten all about that. Oh my God, that could be another hour and a half. So, but I'll keep my eye on the time because everyone's probably used to sitting and being stationary. I had my second NDE when I was 19. I had a hernia operation. I was in the hospital for over a week at that time. Now it's an outpatient surgery. But when I woke up from my operation, my mother was sitting by the bed and she burst into tears and she said, "The doctor said he lost you." I thought, okay, well, then that confirms where I went. I did not have the golden, loving, good time that I had the first time. Pardon me. It was a rough time. I had been living with physical pain. I couldn't stand up straight for a long time. I had gone to a star package theater. So I had this wild summer of just hedonism and just wild. It was like Tom Jones, Engelbert Humperdinck, Mitzi Gaynor, Liberace, who I loved. Oh, I love that man so much. What an amazing man. B.B. King. Gosh, it goes on and on. Peggy Fleming. But it was like this star package theater. So it was like, wow, that world is its own tribe. That's all I can say. And it was an extraordinary gift to be there. I learned a tremendous amount. And when I came back from that, I thought, I can't go on with the physical pain. And also, because of all the abuse I had been through, I was a very angry person and resented people. I remember being in a theater company and the director came over to me and said, "Althea, everything is about love." And I went, "I know it." It was like, okay. And he kind of backed away. I was so angry. I had been so abused, so humiliated, and I hadn't processed all this from all the abuse that I had. I had lost trust. And the accumulation of that came out when I had this near-death experience when I had the hernia operation. And where I was open and innocent before I was 7 and had compassion for my abusers, I had so much self-hate because I felt so stymied in my life. All the critical judgment and not believing in myself from all the critical judgment and not being in a career that I really felt was right for me. So I was miserable and I was just angry all the time and I had trouble walking. I had been told, this is another story that was earlier, but I had been told that I'd be in a wheelchair by the time I was 16. I wasn't. And that is, thank you, God, from the work I had done because of my first NDE, looking at spiritually, why do we get limited? Why do we have impairment? Why do we get ill? And in working on that, I was able to free myself from having trouble walking. The hernia was a different issue, and I finally just went, I can't, I kind of put aside looking at spiritually, how do I heal? What do I do? How do I do it? I just wanted to be done. I just didn't care. During the summer, I went through a period where I didn't believe in God. I made other people cry because someone said, well, it's about God. And I was like, I don't believe in God. And she just burst into tears. And I was like, oh, great. Should I feel bad about this? I mean, I was just angry and defensive and resentful. But it also helped me come back to, wow, I'm just disassociated from everything. And I have no love or compassion for myself or anyone else. And all that came up at the life review the second time. I spent a lot of time in darkness during the second NDE because there was a point where they were like, you need time to process this and to figure this out and to surrender. And to learn how to be loving to yourself so you make choices that will take you to places of love and healing. I was like walking into situations that I knew were dangerous and getting whomped. And part of me had, for a period of time, had such an ego. I got a call when I was in New York working that my parents were getting robbed. And so I came back from New York to see what was going on. And I ended up figuring some things out and going, well, let me go talk to them and maybe they'll stop and maybe they'll return what they stole. Well, that doesn't happen. It's about non-attachment. It's about forgiving people. It's about you don't have to be a victim. It's about let it go. And we can't fight someone else's battle. We just can't do that. And my ego was so inflated of, I'll help you. I got crushed. I absolutely got crushed. And, chewed up and spit out by people that were dangerous people. And, as I was going unconscious in this situation where I realized too late that, oh my God, I'm really over my head and how did I get here? As I was going unconscious because I was blacking out, I had guides say, we're going to take you away from this. This is a lesson, and for you to know that you are not your body. When I came back from that situation, I had been drugged and in compromised positions, and it was videotaped and passed around to people in their group. And so there was I lived with tremendous shame and embarrassment. But what I learned while I was unconscious was you were a victim. You could not help this. You were drugged. But you need to take responsibility because you walked into a place that you were not supposed to go. My guidance, I knew I was in a place where it wasn't my life, my tribe, my understanding, but I thought, well, I'll just talk to them and I'll fix everything. What an ego. What a doofus. Good intentions. But it's not that. Everything is between ourselves and God. And what we need to do is look at how we can resolve these things through our self-introspection and through our work with our consciousness, with our God. Wow. And it was the same thing with all the anger that I was creating. And then I had to look at, well, yeah, I was repelling people. I was such an angry, untrusting person that I would sabotage myself. So I came back just so annoyed because I had more work than I wanted to do. But once I started doing it and I started to see the changes that I went through and I started to feel the deep spiritual love again, I just thought, just keep me on this path of learning. Let me take every chapter, every sentence that I need to take for self-healing and awareness. Because what I blame in the other person is really the blame I have put on myself. I became so angry that I was abusive without wanting to be or without knowing it. And then all of a sudden it was like, wait a second here. I need to set this aside because here I'm angry at someone for rejecting me, but I'm turning around and I'm rejecting someone else in the same way. And this is not okay. Kindness is a spiritual lesson. I have been through that lesson. I know how to be kind, whereas some people do not. And so we forgive them for that because they're clueless. They haven't had that lesson yet. I had. And I was irresponsible because I was defensive because I didn't want to tell myself I was wrong. I didn't want to tell myself, boy, I really messed up on this one. And once I did that, and once I started to like look at, oh man, why did I do that? And work through the embarrassment and the shame and the humiliation and the degradation that I had put myself through, that's when I started to really heal. And that's when I started to like really get re-empowered in my life. When I came back from my first NDE, I'm going to switch to there because really the second NDE was really, I just, in a nutshell, gave it to you. I had just a lot of work to do on myself. And I was still not in the profession I wanted to be in. And I was not able to grasp that. I was also so limited. Everyone in the theater was so free. You'd get out and they dance and they would joke around and they're just like so present and just some of them are absolutely remarkable people because they are so in the moment and just captivating. I know why they're stars. I know why they're celebrities because they are just captivating. I did a show with John Savage. I don't know if people remember him, but he was in the movie Hair and the Onion Field, and he was like this up and coming actor, and then was in a motorcycle accident, and then he did certain things, and I worked with him, and he was just extraordinary. Everyone was like, you could not take your eyes off of him. There is something about certain performers where they came in to do this work on stage, and they are captivating. They never disappoint you because every single word, it's like a good poem. Every single word, every comma, every sentence, every period is so aligned in this character they've created. I wasn't that. And I knew I wasn't that. And I wasn't going to be that. And I struggled to let go because I was in that profession, not really for myself, but sort of for myself, but for also other people. When we live for someone else, we lose a certain part of who we are, and our life review can bring it back to us. But then it's up to us to make the decision to change, to let go, to reclaim the importance we've put on another person outside of us, to bring that importance back to ourselves and our life. You know, often people that are forlorn, that have lost hope, well, you need to connect with God and your spiritual guidance and to know that it's there and true for you. But sometimes you need to just say, I take the power I have given to this person for acceptance and acknowledgement of who I am, and I bring it back to myself. So I need to acknowledge and approve of myself. That's the explosion of the soul, the spirit, the heart just being able to flow and come together. We do create our illnesses, a lot of them, from how we think. We really do. I mean, there are towns, like there's one town in particular that everyone had cancer because they lived by a tanning factory, and that all the chemicals from that factory went into the water. So unfortunate and so sad. They were victims of circumstance. Did their life plan take them there? Well, they were there. So going through the cancer is going through the healing and going through what they needed for their understanding. I went through a period of time where every so many weeks, I was getting swollen glands, a fever of 103, horrible sinus drainage. And I was just miserable. I couldn't breathe. I had trouble breathing because I was so congested every 3 weeks. And I finally said, this was after both of my NDEs, and I had gone away from God at the theater, and I had come back. I'd come back from the theater in New York and gone through this surgery, and then started to process because I was so mean. I was agitated, and I was pushing everyone away, and I was so isolated. And I was like, damn it, why am I so alone? I want friends, damn it. But I didn't know how to make them because of, my attitude. But I started working on all of that. And so I started working on healing this issue of my fevers and not being able to breathe. And I got so fed up, I said, God, I surrender this to you. And I think that for people looking for healing techniques, this is the first thing that you want to do, is surrender and say, lead me to understanding why is this being created? Why am I creating this? And let me give this to you so I can heal. And sometimes we do need people to reflect to us issues that we won't see because we've blocked them, or we just can't see them, or we don't think that that's the issue. But I got to a place, now I'm in my 20s at this point. And I got to a place in meditation where all of a sudden, because I'm going through my mind, I love my life, I accept where I am. I kept trying all these things to unlock this illness, because often when we get the thought form that is the doorway that's shut, that gives us the fevers, that gives us the cysts, that gives us the cancer, when we get that one phrase, it is the lock that opens the door, and that's when our healing energy can start. And that's when I have seen disease just lift out of the. And so I was going through this, and I finally went, I surrender, because I don't know it. I don't know what this line is. So I surrender. And all of a sudden, it was like I was standing next to an airplane that just turned on. It was the loudest sound. I felt like I was in a vacuum, a wind tunnel that was a gazillion times stronger than any tornado I had seen in a movie or anything. And it was so loud, it was deafening my ears. It was my Kundalini. My Kundalini discharge went up my spine, and all this energy freed me. And I heard, I am not his little girl. And I had lived, even though I knew that the people that had attacked me as children were wrong, I had somehow lived thinking that they still had power over me, and that I couldn't grow into being an adult. I couldn't grow as a person using my mind. There were just so many things I could not use because unconsciously, these two men that abused me had power over me. And when I heard this, I am not his little girl. And I said, I am not his little girl. Wham! All this lifted. The congestion in my glands lifted. The pain in my shoulders, pain in my back, my lungs, the sinus drainage, my ears were clear. I could hear. And it was like I came out of meditation and I felt like my glands and they were fine. I could breathe with my mouth shut. I could take a deep breath without like gagging because my lungs were clear. I went, oh, this isn't real. And when I said that, all this came back. And I went, no, it is real. And it left. And I sat there for a while going, holy shit, this is, oh my God. We really create our illness with how we think. And I had empowered this abuser, even though I had forgiven him. There are layers to things and things that are unconscious that we live with that we don't recognize until it comes up somehow. And it came up then, and it is real. I was still empowering him as if as if I was his little girl. Ugh, it's real. And I felt so guilty because I had felt that. But when I accepted this, all that illness left. I never got this illness again. I never had 103-degree fever. I never had this trouble with my lungs. I never had congestion in the ears like this. I never had the congestion in my nose in the way it is. I'm still allergic to dust, but all of it was gone. I didn't have this swollen throat, and then it was like a bomb going off in my throat every time I would try to swallow. All of that was gone. And what I realized in that meditation was we do make decisions as children that we don't understand, but it's based on limited information, limited vocabulary, and it goes unconscious and we don't know it's there. And if it is keeping us from being a particular way or living or expressing or creating or whatever it is, and we say, I want to learn, I want to heal, it comes up. And that's what came up for me. As a child that was so abused and neglected because I was so like out of it and couldn't talk and shy, I'd fade away, and angry that I turned people away from me, and angry because I didn't trust because I was abused. All these things, it's like this big ball of pieces of yarn that go together that you never do anything with, and it sits there. It's like, well, do something with it. Either throw it out or you use it, find some sort, because it's just in the way. It's this big ball of yarn that gets bigger and it sits there and, you. But for me as a child, I guess I empowered him unconsciously because I was getting attention. Even though it hurt, even though it was bad, even though it scared me, the limitations and the innocence of the child that I was can make us make decisions that are just not right. They're not aligned in spiritual law. They're not aligned in what's good for who we are. And they stay with us and they make us sick, or we figure it out and it goes away, or makes us sick and then we figure it out and it goes away. But that's one thing that goes on is when you're not feeling well, sit in meditation. I mean, go to the doctor. I mean, I don't say don't not go to a doctor. Always go to a doctor to find out what's going on. But ask, why do I have this experience? What is this about? What is the message here? Is this mine? Is this from a long time ago? Is this current? How do I treat this so I can grow spiritually?
We
So
have few questions. We have 15 minutes. We can still talk about some of these if you're ready to do
Let's
that.
let's do that. Let's go to questions. Yeah. Because if I start any story, it's going to go on longer than what we have time left for.
Ben asks, why is it not easy to access the Akashic records? I was not aware that it was hard.
Well, I think it depends on, so read me the question again. How does she say it?
Ben says, why is it not easy to access the Akashic records?
Okay. First of all, you'll have to let go of whatever technique I've been using to access it. I'm going to let go of it because I'm holding on to a door that I've shut to say it's not easy to do this. We can't do it. I'm going to give you a metaphor. It's a true story. And then I'll get back to the issue of the Akashic records. There was a man that was a pianist, and he used to love to play a certain performer. And he hurt his left hand. And this one composer that he loved wrote a lot for the left hand. When his hand healed, he had trouble and he kept going to doctors. I have trouble with my left hand, physical therapy. I have trouble with my left hand. Went to this doctor and said, my career is over. I love playing this music, but I have trouble with my left hand. And most of the music is really dominant on the left hand. And the doctor looks at him and said, dude, you have two hands. That's it. Don't look at it as your right hand or your left hand. You have two hands. That took the judgment off of him. And 3 months later, he was performing concerts just by this composer. So start with, I want to align with my guides and God and say, I would like to pursue my past lives. I would like help in finding the meaning of the past lives. So when you take away, it's difficult. There's nothing to stop you. It's about forging ahead. I'm going to do this, set a goal. I would say sometimes, if we want to like dive in the ocean, we pick a little area instead of the whole ocean, because then we can get scared that we're going to drown because it's the whole ocean. When we pursue past lives, look at it as, I would like to know about one life that is important to me. So how we approach that is different for everyone. If you have a period of time in history that you are attracted to, then possibly that's a place to start. I know when I went to London, when my feet, I went from the airport to a cab, and when I got out of the cab and stood on the ground, my soul opened up and I heard, I am home. And I felt roots go through my body, through my legs, through my feet into the ground. And I went, I have been here before. And it was the kind of comfort and love I felt that I knew I had been here before. I'd had many lives. So it's pick something that attracts you. Don't just go, I want to explore past lives. It's, I would like to explore this period in time. I would like to explore being in nature in this time in other lives. I have this affiliation with the jungle. Do I have past lives in the jungle? Let me pursue this in that way. Costumes. Look at costumes. Look at architecture. Look at animals. Are you drawn towards certain animals? I used to hear in my mind about this bowerbird. It was like, what is that? And I finally found it. It lives in Australia. And I have lives from Australia. And I found it through this association of this bird. I love birds. And but this one bird kept coming up, and it was like I couldn't find it anywhere. Well, I found it in my Akashic records. I found it in my past lives. So it might, I give that to you because it's about, I want to do this, I'm going to do this, and one life at a time, one aspect at a time, and let me go where I am drawn. And even food can draw you to a place. If you had been a farmer, if you had been a potato farmer, if you had been over in Ireland, that might trigger, the potato might trigger it. It's what are you drawn to? I had a client that came to me and he said, I just can't stand tea. Everywhere I go, people want to give me tea and I hate it. And I said, why don't you look through history, Chinese history? And he did it. He called me and he said, I think I was this woman in China because it resonated. And there was this emblem of this thing, this logo that I see with this tea that I really hate in this picture. And he did past life regression, and that was he had a connection there. So that's how you start. And it's not about it's hard. It's about, I want to pursue this. I'm going to pursue this. I'm going to gain access about my spirit, my soul, my journey through past lives. And I am picking this to take me on the journey.
Wonderful.
Be patient with yourself. Yes.
He says, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
I have another question.
Okay.
Cheryl, she says, talk about how that philosophy of not internal peacemaking implements into the current politics, life awareness schism, and relating to those who evidently are not in our tribe.
Wow, this is complex and deep. I love things like this. Read it to me again. I need to hear it again.
Okay, we don't have a lot of time, and we have another question after this. So
Okay.
talk about how that philosophy of our internal peacemaking implements into the current political life awareness schism and relating to those who evidently are not of our tribe.
Yeah, that is a big question. And that is, wow. It's like when I heard all those languages singing in harmony. Would they get along on the earth plane now the way they did on the other side? That possibility is there because the only truth is love. But what we are is caught up in our ego and in our mind, and the warrior in us fighting for what we believe in. I think change will come about on the grassroots level through IANDS. IANDS and near-death studies is bringing people together with the understanding that is the truth. And it is bashing the organized religion that is preaching and teaching lies and limitations. We have to recognize that each individual, it's between you and your God. That's the truth.
Yes.
What group can I join to support what I believe in? These people have nothing to do with you. They really don't. They're their own ball game. And it's hard. Well, but they pass laws. Yes, they do. Even more reason for people to unite in the tribe that they are. If that makes sense. But grassroots level is how it's individuals finding out who they are, aligning with community, aligning with state, and aligning with all the states to present their own bill, their own law, or how do we implement this and teach this to people as a moray, as part of culture, as part of respect for life. And so we don't have to involve ourselves with a system that is already corrupt. Does that make sense? Did I answer the question?
Sort of, yeah. Yes, You do. I mean, it's, I guess, it comes from a place of lack of patience because, you feel the ticking clock. It's like there's not a lot of time. Everyone keeps talking about, well, oh, they need to be heard. You need to talk to these people. But what they're talking about is insane. So I guess then where do you bridge that? So you're just saying align with your community and it'll get there eventually, kind of thing.
Yeah, if you work at it, it's like this. This is such a great question. And hi, Cheryl, it's so cool to see you. I started writing a proposed law when I was in Chicago, because the violence and the death of people is so big. And there are so many helium balloons thrown into the air, let go into the air, and all these deaths. There was one weekend where 45 people were shot in Chicago. And a guy at a bodega said to a friend of mine, well, what's the big deal? No one died. What's your problem? Well, oh, that's a big problem. But for the people that died, our environment, our animals, our chipmunks, our rabbits, our turtles, our sea urchins, our fish are choking to death on the remnants of these balloons that go into the air, get caught in trees, go into water. So I started writing something to be passed as a law for Illinois State to ban balloons, just like they used to throw rice at weddings, and that would hurt the animals. And now they use birdseed. I wanted to do the same thing for stopping the use of balloons. So what I started to do was I started writing my proposal, and I was going to start sending this to every alderman in Chicago, every priest or minister that is involved with human rights that's out there. And I moved to Arkansas, and I just found out the other day that because I don't live in Chicago, I cannot continue with that. So this is my metaphor. Look at what you can change, and it's in where you live. What is it that you want to change? And start to look at, how can I do this? What kind of bill can I write? Who can I use as my support? You are in a union, you are in some unions that I bet would support you, because your unions are for keeping unions, which is, could be threatening for what might come. But that is another way. It's what forces can help empower me. And you have a lot of power in organizations around you that you might be able to draw from. So I say, get really clear on what's one thing you would want to change. There are so many threats. We've had our personal choices taken away from us. We have now the issue of a presidency that might not have to answer to anyone and can do damage. We might lose unions. There is that threat. There are so many things. Start with one thing. Make a list of all the things that you think are wrong, and pick one. Which one seems to be the one that I can organize, get people going, present to my state? And if it's a United States law, then it would be like going to Congress. Wow, you would be very cool doing that. I mean, I could see you standing up against all these people, and I can so see you doing that. You've always been, I mean, just because I know a little bit about Cheryl through the years, she can't get away from me. She moves, I find her. So she's sort of stuck with me. But because of them, you have this warrior in you. So did you want to be an alderman? Is this something that you kind of want to do? And that if you get involved with politics, you might actually have a way of doing it? It's a corrupt system. Do you want to kick that kind of ass? If you do, go for it, because you will land on your feet. I know you. If you don't, then find the organizations like your unions that might be able to help you. Does that make sense? Yeah, you go. Any petition you write, I'll sign.
one quick last question from James. He said, you talked at the beginning about how we're all one vibration. I've thought about the connection between color and sound. Are color and sound the same thing? Like note C is red, orange is D, and or not?
I think you're onto something, because frequency is the rate. Frequency is created by a rate of vibration, and so you're exactly on it. If you look at, excuse me, a prism, the slowest and lowest rate of vibration is the color red in a prism. As you ignite that frequency and you turn the frequency up, so it's, instead of like a wave like this, it's a wave like this, it's moving faster, its color is going to change. And usually it goes from red to orange, an orange color. It actually follows the chakra colors: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple. Yeah. And then there are all these other colors that the rate of vibration, it's like, wow, that would be really cool to know. But frequency does align with sound, and the sound is reflective of the rate of vibration. And so that is also reflective of the color. So what you're onto is exactly right.
Terrific.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Oh, you're
much.
welcome. Thank you.
I think we're at an end here.
Yes, it's
And
actually after 4 where I am.
yes, same here. Thank you so much for coming and sharing with us today, Althea. It was terrific. It'll be online, and people can watch it again if they so choose. And we have another speaker coming up, Andrea Corey, next month, and we hope to see you all again and find out what she has to say. So
Thank you so much, Diane, and I thank the Chicago IANDS board and all of you for joining me today. You can find more about me at altheawatsonpsychic.com. And if you have lectures that you want, or classes or workshops that you want me to conduct for you, let me know. And I will put something together, and we'll do a Zoom. And Diane, again, I'm sorry to interrupt you at the end of your sentence, but I want to just get that in. Thank you so much.
all right, thank you so much.
Bye,
Please.
everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Diane.